No, ma'am. She went to twisting and turning, baby. I can't deal with that. Auntie is old, baby. No.
Damn, stop moving. Son.
And, like, man, listen. Pray for me.
Moving. I don't care. Let me finish combing your hair. Turn back around. I do not care about none of that crying.
Everyone that liked this after I posted on Facebook, please hit the thumbs up. Thank you. That's unbelievable. I ain't never seen nothing like it before a day in my life. Just look at that. Just look at it. Look at her. That is a perfect cry.
It's Julie here. This video is going to be a journey, so I hope you're all fastened in. But before I begin, I would like to say a big thank you to everyone who tunes into my videos. I really appreciate the love on my last video. You guys are the best. You took me over 1,000 subscribers with that one, and that's really exciting. Thank you so much. I'm really appreciative. Now to today's video. If you haven't seen my last video, I basically criticized this video of a black woman on the podcast who said,
your natural hair is good for when you want to pick your kids at school. Oh, wow. Don't bring your natural hair to my event.
According to her, it's an unsightly thing to behold. It's such terrible thing that no one should be made to bear witness to. And I basically just talked about how we have so much hatred for our hairs as black women and how divisive the natural hair community has gotten to be. So in today's video, I'm basically going to talk about why our natural hair hates us. Because there is a stereotype when it comes to hair and black women. We've all heard the stereotype, oh, black women can't grow hair. Or once in a while you see this black woman who has long hair, and then the length of her hair or the validity of her hair has to be proven to random strangers. People are always telling her, oh, you have tracks in, show us your scalp and let us see if that's your real hair, blah blah blah. So I think it's about that time when we address why our natural hair hates us. I think when it comes to natural hair and how we are brought up to view it in the black community, an important discussion needs to be had. Now, let's play a game. I'm going to be asking a series of questions, guys. Please do something for me. I want you to go to the comment section and use this emoji every time you answer yes to a question, and this for every time you answer no to a question, and leave your answer in the comments. I will be reading. I would really appreciate it if you could partake in this. Thank you very much. Your responses to these questions have to be in emoji form. If you're having trouble locating these particular emojis, you can use any other that symbolizes no or yes, like this. To post a comment, title your answer childhood and drop your answer. I'll be doing the same on the screen and we can see how much we have in common. Ready? All right. Raise your hand if as a kid you dreaded making your hair. Raise your hand if as a child you cried every time or most of the time you had to make your hair because the pain was almost unbearable. Raise your hand if on special occasions your parent or guardian had you wear styles that had added hair like extensions, attachments or wigs, or just straightened your hair. Raise your hand if you grew up seeing majority of black girls around you with short hair. Raise your hand if you grew up getting relaxers. Raise your hand if you grew up disliking your hair or dreaming of cutting or relaxing because you thought it would make the pain from having to do it stop. Raise your hand if your complaints or discomfort were taken seriously when you let your hairdresser know that you were hurting and she would release her hold on your hair or at least be apologetic about it. Raise your hand if you ever finished making your hair and had a series of small yellow boils that released pus and after a while turned crusty. Now, how many questions did y'all say yes to? Well, these are my answers. Does anyone have similar shit as me? Let me see in the comments. Thank you for participating in this little session. Now, let's start from the most important stage in our lives, childhood. So I think a lot of the issues we have with our hair as grown women definitely comes from the little traumas we have experienced as children. Is that even a word? Is there a word like that? Little traumas. Many little black girls grew up associating pain with hair. At such tender ages, we had little to no autonomy on what we wanted with our hair. Our cries at the salon served as background music, and the headache that came later from such pains to our scalps and vocal cords were just like a rite of passage. Now, did we end up feeling ourselves a little afterwards and shaking and flipping our beaded end braids? Probably, but it is very important to note that the hair turning out cute does not take away from the trauma our scalps must have just been put through. This makes me wonder if there is a deeper reason as to why a lot of melanated people see pain as a vital part of life. I'm not just talking of Black Americans or Africans. Even across places like the Caribbean, there are aspects of our cultures that interlap, and it's quite odd to me how we normalize just the feeling of pain and also the complete disregard of autonomy of kids. It's like a lot of people don't have any care to give to children experiencing pain or discomfort over here because we think it's just a normal and important part of life, even when these things can be avoided. And don't get me wrong, you will experience pain, disappointment, and discomfort as a human being. It's one of the many things that make us living things. But sometimes it seems like we purposely seek it and glorify it even. Like if you don't literally sweat or bleed for something you want or desire, it's not valid and you don't deserve it. You hear a child crying and bawling their eyes out, screaming their heads away, and other parents will nod in approval. That child was being disciplined and will turn out a responsible member of society. But you see the other houses where the children don't cry? The parents were doing a terrible job and raising nuisances, spoiling their kids. It's why you hear a debate once in a while on Nigerian Twitter about whether a housewife who uses washing machine to do her laundry and food processor to blend her foods was really wife material. If she isn't hunched over, sweating and suffering, how can she claim to be a hardworking woman? Is this a sentiment you've noticed, felt or experienced? Let me know in the comments. I think it ties into why we see children's tears while getting their hair done as a sign that the hairdresser is doing their job well. This is why even the moms back then that were quote-unquote notorious for never hitting their kids accepted this version of abuse. They will hold their kids' hands and cry and sweat with them and say a series of sorry and get them treats instead of telling the hairdresser not to grip so tight. It's just the price of beauty. Now check this out, because I'm only going to say this once. Well, I'll say it a couple of times till it gets into your head, but pain during hairstyles is not normal. For every time you feel pain and experience redness of scalp while making your hair follicles are being ripped out. Your hair is on the path of lifelong destruction, and many of us, far more than we are willing to admit, have damaged hair. Many of us do not know because it's all we've ever known, hair pain and trauma. The whole stereotype that black girls' hair can't grow, many of us were going to stylists who always made sure of that. But every time we cried and went to bed in pain, our hairs were being destroyed. At such age, when it was important to lay good foundation, when it was the easiest to grow healthy hair, when we absorbed things like a sponge, when we should have been taught the right way to view and manage our hairs, this became the stage when we saw that it was quite normal for your hairdresser to frown and pant as she attempted to run a fine-tooth comb through your dense hair. It was the stage where we associated the salon with little girls' cries, where we start to get our hair permed once in a few months to get it somewhat manageable. Make no mistake, you will still experience pain, whether relaxed or not, but the extra step to kill the pride of your hair was very important. It was the stage when we saw other girls like us with short or broken hairs too. The stage when we had to add hair during special events because our hair was simply not enough. It was either too short or too rough. Also, sidebar, I don't think that having short hair is a bad thing or that hair is only pretty and acceptable when long, but I think it's important to acknowledge the whys. Why the little white girls on TV seem to have no trouble growing their hair, but black girls had to wear weaves and extensions. And when I say short hair, I'm talking about the ones with excessive split ends and thinning edges, etc. This is not the reality of all black girls, but I'm sure a lot can relate. And this is why I'd really like to see your response to our earlier question session in the comments. So when we say black women don't like their hairs, we're talking about black girls too. Many people hide behind their hair extensions because then they can pretend like their hair that grows out of their scalp is straight and not the tightly curled, dense monstrosity that caused them so much pain and mockery. I remember how sometimes in the hair salons we would laugh and make fun of whichever kid was on the seats getting her hair done and crying. Of course, till it became our turn to go to the hot seats. I remember though that I never cried while getting my hair done. And not because it didn't hurt, but because honestly, even as a child, I found it so hard to cry in front of strangers. It was over my dead body before I'd let people I don't know see me cry. If you ever saw me cry, you were very, very, very close or important to me. But the agony would have me writhing on my seat, protesting and blinking away hot tears. So are we surprised that many grow up to turn away from their hair after experiencing so much pain and shame? I remember watching movies as a child. Subconsciously, I would compare the white girl's hair to the black girl's hair. The white girls would just have their hair in pigtails or ponytails or made to fall freely, and their black counterparts would have tight slick buns, complicated braiding that must have hurt a lot to get, or hair extensions. And when I did see a black girl whose hair was just made to fall freely, she didn't have hair like mine. It was very curly and silky. It's like the media was averse to showing other hair types. Now, I'm not saying we should throw all our cultural hairstyles away and just start doing pig and ponytails and whatever else type of tail is out there. No. But the reason many girls experience pain is that many hairdressers simply don't know how to do hair. They focus too much on how shiny the parts are, how slick the hair is, the end results basically, and not on the process. They think children shrieking and looking like they are undergoing an exorcism while having their hair done is normal and not their business. All they have to do as stylists is deliver those neat braids. It doesn't matter if their clients go bald at 28. It makes me so uncomfortable that we have normalized children's pain so much so that some TikTok hairdressers now make content for laughies about children in agony while making their hairs and tag it as them just being dramatic. I've seen so many videos like these that I don't even think I can play here because of how disturbing they are. And it breaks my heart how little we seem to value children. Yes, these are kids, but they are still your clients and they are deserving of respect and dignity. You don't film children in pain to entertain adults and make money out of it. How sick and utterly depraved can you be to engage in it? Do you even care if these children don't want this video out there, or it doesn't matter because they are, just dumb kids anyway? And a lot of adults eat these videos up, and it's really puzzling to me when I see them having a kiki in the comments instead of being triggered uncomfortable too. All I know is a lot of people will be getting slapped with lawsuits in years to come when these kids grow up to see how they've been exploited and their pain sensationalized. Black children's tears should not serve as entertainment. It is deeper than just hair. Many hairdressers are so dismissive of the children's pain because they don't know how to do hair. It was one of the reasons that even though I liked being girly and having hair, I would dream of cutting it all and going bald. The pain and borderline degradation whenever I went to have my hair done was doing something to my psyche. The fact that I knew that because I was just a kid, the hairdresser would never listen to me cemented that. Hairdressers had no knowledge in doing natural hair. Heck, they couldn't do relaxed hair either. It's crazy now to think of because I am Nigerian and most people here are black with hairs like mine. So if you can't do hairs like mine, why are you now a hairdresser? It's not like you even have white clients. So what are you doing? These stylists didn't detangle. They just expected you, a little black girl, to come in with bone straight hair. They would grab the tiniest combs they could find and just dive in and attack straight from the roots. They didn't have detanglers or conditioners in their shops. All they had was some grease, a rat tail comb, and rage in their hearts. They would grip your hair so tight to completely obliterate any sign of kinkiness and sacrifice your edges to the gods, all in a quest to make your hair neat. And this means to make it look like it's not naturally curly. It really baffles me now to think about, because how did we get to a stage where we simply have no knowledge on how to style our hair if our ancestors were getting it right? They were getting it right? I think the stage of hair hatred as children is really important because it trickles like a small river into our psyche as teenagers to form a sizable pond. Teenagehood. Now we're going to do the same question session again. Picture it as we are tearing a new sheet for a pop quiz in class. Okay, I want you to remember when you were around 13 to 17. Label this answer set teenagehood. When you answer these questions, use an emoji for yes and use this for no. Mine will be on screen. Raise your hand if you like having natural or unrelaxed hair as a teen. Raise your hand if you wanted to relax so bad but the only thing stopping you was because your mom wouldn't let you. Raise your hand if you liked having your natural hair out. Raise your hand if you felt like to attract boys you had to wear a wig or have long flowy hair. Raise your hand if you had long healthy natural afro as a teen. Raise your hand if you were promised relaxer when you got to a certain age and looked forward to it. Raise your hand if you were usually excited for special occasions just so you could have your braids or extensions because the pain wasn't so bad anymore, or because you've gotten used to it and having added hair made you feel pretty. Okay, so I think it's safe to say that in these years we're already coming into our own and forming our own opinions about ourselves and others. Many of us girls had similar experiences with our hairs. I knew of some girls whose parents said they were too young to get relaxers and had to wait a certain age to get it, so it was like a reward for them. So basically at this age, many of us already had it cemented in our heads that the ultimate goal was to have hairs like the white or Asian girls we saw on TV. Long, flowy and straight. Minimal pain. Appropriate. Mature hair that was admired by all. Whether we got it by relaxers, extension or braids, we were excited for that. And the pain was just a small price to pay to have quote-unquote good hair. Our own hairs, it was pretty much accepted that they weren't good enough for events. For many of us, our hair just wasn't growing because duh, black people can't grow hair. And we may have fantasized once or twice about if we were a different race. What we didn't know is how much getting our hair done as children had ruined our chances of growing healthy hair. That the reason many of us had thinning hair was not just genes, as we like to chalk it up to, but because of back-to-back hair damage in our formative years and having no knowledge of proper hair care. We also never saw our hair texture in its own right without comparing it to the straight texture, because that was always the standard. On TV, in magazines, on billboards. We hardly fantasized about having big afros. It was usually hairs that fell down our backs. And thus, we went into the next stage of our lives without fully realizing what it had done to our psyche. Adulthood. Yes, guys, you already know the drill by now. If you have participated so far, I really appreciate it. Your responses mean a lot to me and are really important in educating others. So we're going to do the last question session. This will be headed Adulthood. So that will be 3 different comments so far. Number 1. Raise your hand if you struggle with hair growth as an adult. Raise your hand if you have tight, kinky hair and don't know how to manage it. Raise your hand if you've always thought about how easy life would be if you had straight or looser curled hair. Raise your hand if you suffer from alopecia. Raise your hand if you used to think experiencing intense pain during hair was normal. Raise your hand if you have had to speak up to tell your stylist about any pain you are experiencing while getting your hair done. Raise your hand if you have had a big chop. Raise your hand if you just returned to natural hair after years of relaxers or heat damage. Raise your hand if you don't feel like your hair is appropriate enough for special events. Raise your hand if you are clueless on how to maintain and style your own natural hair. Raise your hand if as an adult you felt serious pains while having your hair done but had trouble speaking up, or spoke up but weren't listened to and having to take painkillers upon getting home. Okay, so my answers on this one are interesting because I am sort of a natural hair enthusiast. That is a story in of itself. But I made sure to fight against what was the norm around the time when I started to grow out my natural hair. But the point is, many of the women you see now with thick, full, glorious natural hair remember the moment they decided to make that turn and begin their natural hair journey. This is because it was not the default growing up. It took us becoming adults or self-sufficient to be able to make the decision of accepting our natural selves. Many of us even got discouraged by close family and friends. Tell me about, are you sure you want to do this? Or you will soon get tired and relax it. I don't know what you're trying to prove. Or just straight up, your hair is ugly. Do something about it. You see, doing nothing drastic to your hair, like putting harmful chemicals in your hair that have been reported to cause cancer, fertility issues, and increased fibroid in women, is something that needs a lot of deliberation. You see, you needed to be older, mature, and self-sufficient to make such a drastic decision, because your parents were not going to buy you appropriate tools for styling your hair or hair products, but will buy a hot comb, flat iron, relaxer, and extensions. I think we need to give ourselves a lot of grace as black women. Many of us are operating from a place of generational trauma. So many of us have a lot of healing to do when it comes to self-image. As much as it is annoying to see a woman say you shouldn't wear your natural hair to our event, I can't help but feel somewhat sorry for women like her. What many of us also believe as bad genes for hair is a generational cycle of poor hair care. You and your female relatives are bald because your hairstylists are your ops. Straight up. My mom didn't necessarily have hair like Rapunzel, neither did any family member that I could remember, as a matter of fact. My hair inspiration actually came from a random woman that my sister had described to me when she came back from church one day. She told me about this woman with magnificent natural hair that happened to be soft, and I remember immediately being obsessed with the thought of having big natural hair. I didn't know it was possible, and it became my goal to become that woman. There weren't a lot of people to look up to when I was growing up. The internet was fairly new, wasn't readily available then. Jeez, I sound old. Please, I'm just in my mid-20s. As of the time I was becoming a teenager, my mom was losing her hair, but I also witnessed her make poor hair choices, like going from tight braid to tight braid to tight braid till the hair couldn't hold up anymore. I could have said, oh, look at that, no good hair genes. But I gave myself that chance first to make decent choices with my hair. And now, after seeing the progress I've made with my hair, my mom has gone natural and is starting her hair journey again. And so did many family members, actually, who saw that it was possible to have natural hair and it not be a burden. This new development gives me hope. But I can't lie that seeing a horde of black women returning to relaxers also makes me nervous and unsure of if it's going to just be the same cycle with the new generation again. Natural hair is not an aesthetic or a trend. It's part of what shapes many black girls and how they view themselves in their most formative years, and I think having good representation within society and in the media is very important. If you've not taken away anything from this video, take away the fact that any style that leaves you in pain for days is destroying your hair. And a great number of us don't have bad hair genes, we just have terrible hair practices, or we're introduced to terrible hair practices as children. And this all culminates in how we grow up hating our natural hair and it hating us in return. We can be the change that I'm hoping we want by making sure that a core memory of our kids is not a bad experience at the salon. So guys, we have come to the end of this video. I know it was a long one, but if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching or listening. I wonder if anyone will find similar answers to the question asked in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this. I will be reading the comments to see. Thank you again for over 1,000 subscribers. Please subscribe if you haven't yet and like this video too. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in my next one.